Welcome one, welcome all. We get a fun, 12 games to talk about here, and we got a bunch of news to sift through. The primary news will be in the middle of the slate with the 49ers and Vikings, where Christian McCaffrey being out almost gives us a free square, almost as big of a free square as the one we had on Showdown the other night with Jordan Mason, and we'll talk about him very, very shortly. But if you guys did watch last week, you noticed there was one guy missing, and that was because he was enjoying himself at the Colorado-Nebraska game where Nebraska laid down a thumping on Colorado there. Snyder, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm excited to be back with you guys. It was a fun time last week at the game. I was hoping it was going to be a little more climatic, but it was pretty much over right away in that game, but it was good to see there. Excited to dive into the slate with you guys. Interesting slate we got here with a bunch of early games and then 3 afternoon games. I think, 3 afternoon games, and a lot of the chalk is going to be in a couple of those afternoon games. So it'll be interesting to kind of dive into this with you guys and see what you guys are feeling early on and possible late swaps and stuff we could have in the afternoon and such.
Yeah, late swapping will be an issue that we have to face here because you'll have a lot of the Rams value and Cooper Kupp as well. You also got the Bengals and Chiefs kicking off late. And Justin Fields probably getting the start there against Denver, too. So lots of fun to be had. Drew, I'm going to bring you in, man. How are you doing? How'd you do last week?
Yeah, doing good. Nothing too noteworthy last week. I think a couple of the chalk plays were fine. I think it was the lower-owned plays that didn't hit. I was trying to think through, like, the lineup construction. We didn't talk about this pre-show, but I was like, throughout the year, maybe thinking through like how the lineup construction changes week to week. I know last week's Millie was a bit extreme, having like 900K entrance versus this $20 this week. But I think it was stacking. It was game stacking. It was mini stacks with run backs. Like there was a lot more correlation than what I had touted on the show anyways. But we lived to fight another week.
Did you see the lineup that won it?
Yeah.
It was a naked quarterback. So
was it? But there were stacks in it. There were right. There was two from. Was it the first game?
It was like a double New Orleans stack where they just didn't correlate the guy. I would honestly say there was no correlation in that lineup.
Okay, that's fair.
A straight game stack. There was 900,000 entrants in that one. The good news is if you didn't win last week, well, you only got to compete against 700,000 less entrants. With only 205,000 in this week's $20 million. And we will go ahead and get the slate started here. I want to get us out because if you are a big sports fan, you probably know that UFC 306 is tipping off or has tipped off about 90 minutes ago. And I want to make sure that every one of us can watch it too. So especially the pay-per-view part. So let's go ahead and dive into a Raiders and Ravens matchup for week 1 here. If you don't know, well, the Raiders kind of threw a curveball at us. It was Madison who kind of led the backfield after a big play early on in that game, who got the roll over Zamir White. Obviously, you have Isaiah Likely basically being tight end number 1 in Baltimore there on that Thursday night game to open the season. Snyder, I'm going to lead it off with you. What do you see in this game? Do you see a lot of value? Are you going back to a guy like Isaiah Likely this week?
Yeah, I kind of think Isaiah Likely was the guy that they were kind of leading up to kind of potentially overtaken. I know they're going to run a lot of two tight end sets like we saw in the first game. So I expect Isaiah Likely to be out there quite a bit. I know they were kind of bracketing Andrews, and Andrews had struggled against Spags' defense historically every time he's faced them. So he was kind of a fade for me naturally in that showdown slate. So I was all right on that. But I think the Ravens are going to kind of roll through on this matchup. I don't think we see Lamar Jackson take that many rushing attempts again this week. I think this is the perfect spot for them to kind of get Derrick Henry going here. I really wouldn't see Lamar Jackson taking more than 10 rushing attempts, let alone 16 rushing attempts this week. I kind of think this is a nice soft landing spot for Derrick Henry at home. Big favorite, good matchup. So he's 6,700. He's not going to be that highly owned either. So I'm going to be kind of overweight on Henry in this spot. I love the matchup in the spot for him there. I think he'll probably be somewhere, 8 to 12% ownership wise. So it'll be pretty easy to get overweight on him with the other value running backs and the other ones that we're going to get into. So Henry is definitely going to be a guy I'm overweight off in tournaments. not really going to play the passing attack much for the Ravens. They're so tough at home. I think they can get up 2 touchdowns early in this game, and just kind of milk it away and not really do too much. So I'm going to probably be. I think Lamar and like the Millie Maker though. I think he's going to be so low owned. If you want to throw Lamar in there with like Zay Flowers and likely or Bateman or something like that, I think Zay Flowers is definitely going to get back to where he was last year. To end the season there, I think he had four or five games with over 20 points there to end the season last year. So they were definitely working him in there. He found the end zone 5 of the last 7 games, I think, last year too. So it wouldn't surprise me to see Zay Flowers find the end zone once again, especially here in this home script. I'm going to be off the Raiders completely though, because I think the Ravens are going to roll here off that close loss. I was actually on the Chiefs in that game. I bet the Chiefs, but definitely think the Ravens are going to roll here. And I like Derrick Henry to go for 100 yards and 1 or 2 touchdowns in this game.
Yeah, and Derrick Henry obviously is going to be a little popular, the highest owned in this game, I should say, which isn't very, very popular because it is a low-owned game because of what we just saw the Chargers do last week with J.K. Dobbins specifically going, 10 carries for over 130 yards and a score. Drew, when I look at this game here, we saw Brock Bowers. He's actually the highest owned Raider projected to be. You also have the Ravens defense and Derrick Henry above 10% each. Henry around 15. Is this a game where you kind of entertain double stacking Henry with the Ravens D, or maybe going for that leverage and doing a Lamar and Zay Flowers stack like Snyder said?
Yeah, unfortunately, this is probably going to be just playing the chalkier plays out of this game. I don't see myself. I have a few shares of Zay Flowers, but he's pretty expensive. He doesn't. You would kind of want to play an expensive wide receiver like that with another quarterback to try to get some type of correlation if they're going to hit 30 points or something. So, yeah, I think Derrick Henry with the Ravens make quite a bit of sense. Derrick Henry by himself makes a lot of sense. Still not crazy owned. It's not going to be like 35% like we saw like Kamara in some of those contests last week. But, yeah, the lower owned plays in this game don't really do it for me. I think it's a little bit of a stretch. Like I just don't think the ceiling is there from the Las Vegas side. But the Isaiah Likely I think makes a lot of sense. If you're going to play this game or if you're going to like make tweaks to this game, you probably want to make a decision if you're going to play Andrews or Likely and X one out, and don't just get a mixed share of either. Just be right or wrong. Don't try to like find a balance, I guess. That'd be my take on that one.
No, really?
Yeah. Damn it. That was really interesting week 1. It was one of my favorite props coming in was the Isaiah Likely one, and now you're seeing like Isaiah Likely being higher owned than Andrews, which I don't know if that'll be the case. They are 200 apart, but I think I would rather go Andrews at this point. Hope that week 1 was a fluke, kind of go against the tide in that sense. And that would be like, that's not interesting because tight end was horrible last week. Outside of the Thursday game with Isaiah Likely, tight end was absolutely horrendous. Oh, yeah. You have 3 guys here projected for about 15% ownership combined, about 5% each. I think like Andrews would be my guy. And that's no diss to Brock Bowers, but like he's got to compete against Devontae Adams, a team that really wants to run the ball a ton too. I don't love this game except for, Henry, like you guys said, and kind of, fiddle with the chalk with the Ravens D. I did like the fact that how much Zay Flowers was involved, even though it was a lot of behind the line of scrimmage. That does bode well for ceiling games down the line, I think. All right, so from one mediocre game to probably one of the best game stacking environments here. We talked about it last week, Drew, and I'm going to lead off with you here because we talked about the Tampa Bay game being one to stack, and we, talking about stacking it with the Washington Commanders, and it ended up working out, except we were on the wrong side because I think I was very high on McLaurin, and McLaurin never got a look. But Jaden Daniels luckily saved the day and had 2 rushing touchdowns and went off. But also, the Tampa Bay Bucks had both McMillan, Godwin, and Evans all go off along with Baker Mayfield. This is a game with a total in the 50s. You have the Tampa Bay Bucks who are, a very clear target tree. You know who they're going to target for the most part. Are you looking at this game as one to stack up or, Amon-Ra St. Brown, a bounce back spot too for him as well?
Yeah, I think if you get totals like this, you want to stack up as much as you can from the offensive side of both sides. But yeah, this would be one where you're not just picking out single pieces. I mean, unless there's a cheap piece, you just want to throw into some other lower owned stacks. But generally speaking, if you're going to play these high scoring games, you want a big chunk of it so that when it goes off, you get like 60% of your lineup right off the bat. So yeah, I think again, there's there's not like crazy ownership in general here. Like obviously you can probably go overboard playing like 3 or 4 guys that are over 15%, but like looking down like the Detroit side with Amon-Ra St. Brown, with Jared Goff, you can do that. You can even pair him with Gibbs. I don't think that's terrible. The other side of that with Tampa Bay, I said it last week. I think Godwin with Mike Evans was fine, but Godwin got a pretty good price bump. So I think it's a little bit constrictive to play Mayfield with Evans and Godwin in this spot. I think their prices kind of make you want to have one hit a 35-point mark and the other one probably doesn't get there. So for me, I'm probably going to change my tune on Tampa Bay this week with, Mayfield with either Godwin or Evans and maybe one other cheap, tight end or something. But in Detroit, I think it's the 3 main guys. It's Gibbs, Goff, and Brown.
Perfect. And yes, this game does have a lot of ownership, with Godwin actually leading the way at projected 22% ownership. Snyder, when you look at it here, obviously in showdown, it was the Rams and Detroit Lions where Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery found the end zone, but it is Gibbs who's projecting for around 14% ownership. Jared Goff at 6,400 being a little bit popular here, which is a little bit surprising to me. Are you going to be entertaining any Lions stacks on that side of the ball?
Yeah, I really like the Lions. Lions are one of my favorite teams to stack up this week. When I first saw this line, I thought it'd probably be like closer to like 5 or 6, and now it's like 7.5. I think Vegas is trying to bait people into taking Tampa in this spot. Tampa's secondary is pretty much took a bunch of injuries last week. I think the Lions are just going to roll over in this spot. I think it's going to be a lot through the air. I really like St. Brown. I think his ownership's going to be about half of what we see like Cooper Kupp and Debo at. So probably about 15% compared to them, around 30%, I think. So I'm going to be really heavy on St. Brown here. I'm going to be heavy on him. I'm going to double stack it in some smaller type contests too. I'm going to go St. Brown and JMO. I was high on Jameson coming in. I was high on Jameson last year too, because just with the talent out of college, though, he was one of the best talents I think I've seen coming out of college from Alabama. There, we saw what he did in the playoffs and such, in that whole season there. Playing last week, we kind of got a little glimpse of that. 9 targets, caught 5 of them, over 100 yards, scored the touchdown. 5.3 is still pretty cheap, I think, for what his upside is. So I'm going to be high on this passing attack for sure, as I think they can just shred this defense. A secondary is in trembles right now. So high on St. Brown, high on Jameson. I think I'm going to be underweight on Tampa, though. If they're going to be that highly owned, I'd rather play if Godwin's going to be higher owned than St. Brown and Jameson, I'd rather go with the Lions side here. I don't think Mike Evans is going to see that much ownership with this price tag up there and everybody else. So if you did have the salary, you could run it back with Evans or something. But I'm going to be heavy on St. Brown and Jameson. I think Laporta is a great spend up. A lot of people are going to go to the values this week at tight end position. So I think like Laporta and McBride, as we get in there later, are going to be elite spend-up options to get different. To kind of help differentiate yourself. So you could run doubles. If you're playing like really, really small contests, you can maybe get away with like a triple or something like a 500,000 person contest or something like that. I think you could get away with that. I wouldn't want to do that for the millie, though, definitely. But I would limit it to 2 for like the millie maker or such. But I'm really high on Denver as a whole, and I think they're going to roll in this spot. So I like them minus the 7 as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, too, when you just look at both these teams, what they did in week 1. Obviously, the Lions conceded a lot through the air. Even after Puka went down, it was a lot of Cooper Kupp. Tyler Johnson ended up being that showdown winner. But surprisingly, despite a team not having a ton of passing yards, which was the Washington Commanders, they were able to get 82 yards out of the slot, which was 9th in the league. And the Lions conceded 95th or 95 yards, which was bottom 5 in the league. So the slot position here could be something. And this is maybe why Godwin's getting a little bit of ownership. From the slot last week, he went 5 for 53. Evans went 3 for 31. With the Lions, too, when you just look at what they've done in the past, it is a lot of like Laporta and Amon-Ra St. Brown in the slot. They're mixing it up. So that seems to be, like, early on at least, the place where you want to target these two teams. Week 1 doesn't tell a whole story, but at least tells part of it. And it seems like maybe the Washington Commanders were did not want to throw outside the numbers at all. If you did look at Jalen Daniels' numbers and stuff, so maybe you can expect more success from the Lions, who should be able to do that. But Jameson Williams, showing out on prime time last Sunday night. But I'm with you. I mean, I can kind of see the case for Godwin. 6,800 is a lot, but I would say Amon-Ra St. Brown for a bounce back is probably my favorite play in this game, because I think you're going to have the upside at wide receiver, the salary to spend at wide receiver, more specifically, I should say, because we have a ton of running backs, especially in the 5K range, who we can just jam in and then play the studs at wide receiver. And I think Amon-Ra will be at the top of that list. So let's go to a dome game. This is the Saints coming off 40-something points against the Panthers. Was it 47? Is that what it ended up being? Absolutely embarrassing a team that I actually thought would be competitive this year, which was the Carolina Panthers. With the Cowboys, this is a team that did well in week 1. I think they're, 27-point team total almost, so hovering around there. It's an okay total. It's one that, Drew, you always mentioned this could be a good one to, game stack, these type of numbers where it's kind of the high 40s where it doesn't get a ton of ownership. Really, outside of CeeDee Lamb and Alvin Kamara, who are both projected for 15, 16% ownership, this game has no ownership at all in it, Snyder. So, outside of CeeDee Lamb and Alvin Kamara, do you have much interest in this game, or are you just playing the studs there at the top?
For this game, this is the other game that I really like. I think this is a spot where I was actually really heavy on the Saints from a betting aspect last week. And then I think this is where they kind of come back to reality here. Dallas at home in these spots last year, they just absolutely nuked. We saw those big games from Dak. I think CeeDee Lamb is going to be relatively lower owned too than some of those other guys up at the top. I think CeeDee Lamb is going to be higher owned than St. Brown, but still under the top 3 guys. So I think we'll get in a little bit lower owned than some of those guys. Like Cooper Kupp, Deebo Samuel, Rashid Rice will probably be up there too. Chris Godwin, like we just mentioned. CeeDee Lamb will probably be right in with Godwin, I think. But I think this is one of those spots that we've seen last year where Lamb just goes nuclear. We saw him put up 35-40, 35-40, 42, 44, 32, those big games last year at home in situations like this. So I'm going to be spending up at receiver for sure. And this is the other spot that I really like. I really like the Lions at home, and I really like the Cowboys at home in these situations. So it's going to be pretty on script there. Dak to Lamb. I don't think I'll really get the Cooks much. Shaheed's the cheap guy that I'd probably run it back with. He's got that upside, the boom bust upside, like we saw last week, catching 3 for 73 and a touchdown. He had that 60-yard touchdown catch. So that could be the run back there if you want. We saw the tight ends get into it for New Orleans last. I don't think I'll go there. If you're looking for a punt, though, some people are going to go to Schoonmaker, I think. He did all right at times. I wouldn't expect a lot from him, maybe 2 or 3 catches, but he's 2,900. You could run it in there with a double with Dak, but Dak the Lamb is my general stacking point in this. I'm going to be very overweight on Dak and CeeDee Lamb on the slate.
It's a good point. Jake Ferguson not going to play in this one. It looks it's going to be Luke Schoonmaker, who's probably going to get the majority of the snaps there. It could be Spanford. I think they played an even amount of snaps last game, which is kind of surprising to see that Sabre had Spanford over Schoonmaker in their projections and also their ownership stuff. So I'm very interested to see how that shakes out, whether we get worried whether it is Schoonmaker. Because if he's starting, I can see him getting a little bit of ownership. I don't feel the need to spend up at tight end. And spending down does unlock like a lot of builds, especially at the top of the wide receiver range. Drew, we got to mention Taysom Hill, right? And the reason why we got to mention him is because tight end sucks. Tight end sucks. Let me get there. So 3,900 last week, despite scoring 47, Taysom Hill didn't do anything. However, I think if there was a week to play him, I think I'd entertain it right here. I'd entertain it right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how you pick the week out of the year. I feel like he really gets pressure at the end of the season when like just shit's hit the fan and they're just going to try some funny stuff. Like last week was actually, I got a lot of notifications for Derek Carr throwing TDs. So I'm going to give it another shot and see if there's some type of trend here with New Orleans. So I think obviously it's pretty low owned on both sides of this game. But a little bit of recency bias off of last week. I did play some Derek Carr. I did like seeing the touchdowns, mostly on owner's box. But I'm going to take some Chris Olave. I think he's cheap. I think his point projection is like 5 points less than what it really should be in this type of spot, especially if they're playing catch up to Dallas. I think the flip side of that is CeeDee Lamb might not get there at his price. He's not really that popular anyway, so it's not like it's going to, really bring you to the top if he doesn't get there. But I think the play in this game, as far as from the Dallas side, is playing Ezekiel Elliott at 5,700. I think the game script could go either way. You're not going to game stack it this way, but I think CeeDee Lamb doesn't get there at 9K, basically 8,800. If they do get a lead, and let's just say I'm wrong on New Orleans and they do suck, Ezekiel Elliott's going to get the ball. He's probably going to get a couple goal line TDs, and he's probably going to get a lot of touches late in the game. So I think Ezekiel Elliott at 5,700 is probably one of the best values in the right game script. And then if I'm wrong, I'm going to play the New Orleans side, and I'm going to take Derek Carr with Olave. And that's probably it. I mean, Shaheed, you could probably throw in there too. That's totally fine. But I think for me, it's really like a very narrow focus of Carr and Olave, and they're both it's just those two. And that's it. I'm not going to play any Kamara in those stacks. I think his ownership actually creeps up a little bit more than what it's showing right now. So for me, it's the hopefully contrarian side of Derek Carr and Olave, and they stay up or they keep pace with Dallas. And if not, Dallas is got a nice strong lead. Ezekiel Elliott in my other lineups probably is a pretty good value at his price.
Yeah, it's a very good point too regarding Olave, where the Saints went off and Olave didn't do anything, and that was really demoralizing when you have a bunch of Olave and best ball and stuff. And yeah, you're right. Like a projection at 12.55. We were just talking about it last week. It felt light last week. Obviously, it wasn't. But I think this week, this is a Dallas team that they get a lot of interceptions. They can turn you over and stuff, but they're not an elite secondary by any means. And now that this game, after the first quarter, that game was over. Especially the first half, that game was over in Carolina. I think that Olave is much more involved, and I think 6,400 at under 5% ownership. That would be my favorite play of the Saints going into today. And as much as I like to joke about it, I will 100% sprinkle in Taysom Hill because I look at tight end right now, and there's a decent chance I'm going to be punting below 3K. Hell, if I have an extra 900, I might take the guy who gets some goal line carries and has some packages for him. It's a dart throw, but it's something that I think you don't really ever have to correlate with him either. Like you can just have him jammed in a tight end, don't have to worry about anything, and just hopes he gets the touches. And I think last week they probably did have some plans for him, but why showcase him when you're up 30? And I think he gets a lot more involved in that offense moving forward. So Giants and Commanders. This one, I'm very surprised by this. Jalen Daniels only projected for 6% ownership. That feels incredibly light. I thought it would be closer to 15. What we saw last week was a guy who ran the ball a ton, a guy who got the bonus rushing and also got 2 touchdowns. That's not something you pass up every day at 6,200, especially when you're going against the Giants, who the Commanders are actually going to be in a good fight for this one here. Another guy from this game that I was really high on too coming in is Malik Neighbors being under 6K. The ownership there around 12, 13% right now. I think that also rises. This is a Washington Commanders secondary that showcased why they were the worst in the league last year, and they did it again in week 1. Malik Neighbors is going to get his. I think Daniel Jones forces him the ball. Drew, I'm going to go to you here. Is Malik Neighbors an easy click at under 6K here?
Yeah, but it'll be with Daniel Jones. I don't know about you guys.
Daniel Jones, you would stack him up?
Danny Dimes.
That's gross.
Well, so like last week, I don't know about you guys, but I on Sunday, late Sunday, or like late morning Sunday, I don't know why. Saber was jamming Jones into everything, like a lot. And I was just like, sure, we don't know anything. It's week 1. It's 800,000 people in this tournament. Anything. Honestly, like Daniel Jones' cousin could be like viable, like in the Millie Maker. Like who knows? So it did not work out, and I was very pissed that because like in your mind, it's like, why would I want that much? But I guess the numbers make sense. Sure, we'll go for it. So yeah, if I'm gonna play him, I'm gonna stack him up with Daniel Jones and get right one of these weeks. It'll just be Martingale and Daniel Jones for the rest of the season until we get back to even. But yeah, Malik Neighbors obviously a fantastic spot. I'm probably not going to go to Robinson. I do have some shares of him, but I think it's just going to be Daniel Jones with Neighbors. From the other side, I think Washington. I don't know, man. I have a lot of exposure to everybody on this side in different elements. So like Brian Robinson by himself, Jaden Daniels with McLaurin. I even am fading New York Giants by playing the Commanders. So overall, this game is pretty low owned for a decent total. I mean, all things considered, it's like 4 points less than some of the higher totals, or 6 points less than some of the higher totals. Dude, I do like stacking up, and I like stacking up both sides. So like in the $20 with 250,000 entries, I honestly do not hate a run back in this spot. If I'm going to play some Danny Dimes, it's going to be McLaurin coming back, and the same for Malik Neighbors if I'm going to play Jaden Daniels with McLaurin. Brian Robinson seems like a pretty good value. I'm surprised his ownership's that low, to be honest. I feel like in this type of game, it'd be a little bit higher. But overall, I think this is a pretty good get-right spot for the Giants.
So it is interesting on Brian Robinson, where I think a lot of people were fearing Eckler. But, I mean, it's clearly Brian Robinson's backfield. Eckler is just the change of pace guy. When I look at your boldness to not only play Neighbors with Daniel Jones instead of just saying, screw it, I'm going Neighbors and that's it, but also including Terry McLaurin's name after what the Commanders did to us last week with just one of the worst schemes. Like it was on par with like the Broncos in terms of just never giving your quarterback a chance. And Snyder, I stacked up Jalen Daniels and Terry McLaurin last week, and it was one of my favorite stacks. In a 205,000 person contest, can you run Jaden Daniels naked at quarterback here and hope to win, or do you feel like you have to stack him up?
That's interesting there because I don't think they want him running that much, kind of similar to Lamar last week. I don't think they want him running the ball 15 to 18 times. I mean, it's not like he was looking to avoid contact either. If he's going to be playing like that every game this year, he's not going to last long. So I think they're going to look at the tape and kind of adjust going forward. I do think he'll still scramble at times, but I'm with Drew here. I like the Giants side of the ball in this matchup. I like Danny Dimes this week. I didn't play him last week, but I do think this is the spot though for him here. 5,300. It's a cheap price tag. This Washington defense is horrible. We've seen a bunch of quarterbacks, good and bad, destroy this secondary defense. So I'm in on Daniel Jones this week. I think you can play him with Neighbors or Wan'Dale. I don't think Wan'Dale gets to 12 targets again. I think we could see this kind of flip-flop. I think Neighbors is the guy that gets the 10 to 12 targets this week, and Wan'Dale gets 5 to 7. Wan'Dale did get 3 red zone targets, so he was looking for him in the red zone. So I think you can play all 3 of those. I mean, you can play all 3 of those at double, and it's right at like 15K. I think somewhere right around there for the double stack there. I kind of like Luke McCaffrey and like the Million Maker. He was kind of up higher on those separation charts. When you see the wide receiver separations from the secondary and stuff, and some of that 3,800 for his upside isn't bad. But I do like Malik Neighbors this week. I think he has a pretty big game this week. I think he finds the end zone and pays off that 5.9 price tag rather easily this week. So I'm high on Neighbors, Daniel Jones. I don't mind some Wan'Dale Robinson. I'll have him in the pool. And that's about it. Tight end wise, I probably won't go any of these guys. You could look at Theo Johnson if you want. He had 4 targets last week, but I'm not going to play old Zach Ertz either. So mainly just Jones with Neighbors and some Wan'Dale as well.
Perfect. And here's a very nice stat here, right? We had the Washington Commanders gave up the second most yards from slot, only to the Eagles, who gave up 150. The Commanders gave up 149 yards. The only guy to catch a pass from the slot last week for the Giants was Wan'Dale Robinson. So food for thought. If the Commanders are going to be that bad against the slot, I know they were going against Evans and Godwin for the most part. Wan'Dale's a little bit of a tier down, but it is worth mentioning that maybe the slot is the position to target against the Commanders, and Wan'Dale would be the one to pick from the Giants in that case. I didn't want to do it, but I guess I am high on the Giants passing game, so I guess I could see a Daniel Jones with Wan'Dale and Neighbors double stack in my future, as gross as it is. The ownership on Daniel Jones is around 6%. It's a really cheap stack. I think it's less than 15. No, it's less than 15.5 total, which I can be entertained without a doubt. So yes.
See, Jason's in the chat already getting jammed with Danny Dimes. I don't know what was going on, dude. I was getting so much, like literally, like probably like 80% Danny Dimes, and like if I ran 20 lineups and send them out, and I hated it. So yeah, I mean, we talk about this on the golf show all the time. Like a lot of guys, like if you like the 1 week, and assuming like it's not just some drastic drop to like, a 12-point Vegas total, you might as well play them the next week, and you probably get a flop lag spot where they're 3x lower ownership. So I just don't hate that. I mean, what they did off of last week is not a big deal. It's the same if they did really good. It's a good spot to hop off as well.
Yep, absolutely. And now we're going into a game where there is reason to hop off, and that's the Green Bay Packers, because their quarterback is Malik Willis, and that's not very promising. I do have a lot of faith on the floor, but we have seen Malik Willis turn offenses into the 1960s with the way they ran the ball in Tennessee with him at the quarterback. I don't think LaFleur is going to do that, but it does make me a little bit nervous on guys like Christian Watson and the rest of these wide receivers where, yeah, I can see why the projections in Sabre are incredibly low, and it's almost discouraging. Jaden Reed has the highest projection of 6.99 in Sabre as things currently stand for the wide receivers for Green Bay. On the other side of the ball, what did we just see Green Bay do? Well, they gave up a ton of yards to Saquon Barkley. They gave up a ton of touchdowns to him. Why is Jonathan Taylor projecting for less than 5% ownership? Snyder, can you riddle that for me? Is that wrong? Is Jonathan Taylor going to come in way higher end than that?
Let me pull him up. This game kind of has me kind of confused. Just like looking at the line and such, it's now down to 2.5. So there's some money coming in on Green Bay. I think LaFleur is going to have something up his sleeve to scheme up this to like make it slow, muddy it up. It's just weird how the money's come. I mean, I know the sharps are going to be on Green Bay in this side, but yeah, I'm seeing Jonathan Taylor right around 5%. He's interesting for sure. I haven't really played him much. I didn't play him much last year, so I'll probably be off of him at this 7.7 price tag. It just hasn't been a guy I've been on the last couple of years, so pretty easy fade for me in this spot for me on Jonathan Taylor. So I'll be off him. I could see a lot of work for Josh Jacobs, though, in this spot. I could see them scheming up ways to get him the ball in the passing game as well, too. Only had 2 catches last week, but we've seen him have some catches before. I know it was at the Raiders and such. We saw him have some games last year with 5, 6, 7, 8 catches in those games. I think we see LaFleur try and get Willis some easy throws, some dump offs to like Jacobs and some easier targets. I think this is going to be like a slower game. Don't really have much interest in this from a DFS perspective. My favorite play would be Josh Jacobs, so at 6,500. I don't think he's going to see much ownership either. I'm seeing Josh Jacobs right around that 5% mark as well. So I think I'm going to go with some Josh Jacobs, if anything, in this game.
Yeah, that's a good point, too. I completely overlooked the fact that the Colts made Joe Mixon look like he was 23 again with the way he ran the ball against them. Drew, Josh Jacobs is projecting for 6%, Jonathan Taylor for 4%, and then the Packers defense is projecting for 8%. Those are the highest owned in this game overall. I thought the Colts defense would be higher. I think that 3,300, I do think that they're going to come in a little bit higher owned against Malik Willis, but like Snyder said, I do think it's going to be a slow-paced game. Do you have much interest in this one outside the running backs at all, or is it just the running backs, defenses, and move on?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's probably going to be a pass. A little bit of running backs, a little bit of defense, and that's honestly it. I was going to make a joke about my favorite play being 3,300 as the Colts, but yeah, I did some digging. I looked around at some other ownership projections, and they're all in that same ballpark for Jonathan Taylor at 4.5%. So it's not like Sabre's far off from the industry. So I'm not sure. I feel like that's low. Everyone else doesn't. So we'll see. Maybe that is a decent spot to get a little bit of exposure. But overall, this is kind of a stay away for me in the Millie Maker, at least.
Yeah, that makes sense here. And yeah, I do agree. I mean, what we saw with Anthony Richardson, I was very high on Adonai Mitchell last week. He was open, deep. Anthony Richardson he just decided to target Doolin and Alex Pierce a little bit more.
Ruby, did you see those two passes? The one, he had a wide open 50-yard touchdown pass. He threw it 10 yards over his head.
I was very high on AD Mitchell's 35-yard prop too. So seeing those hurt, I don't think I'm going to go with the passing game. But this is why I like Jonathan Taylor's outlook for the entire season. If they're going to have to run too high safety, where Anthony Richardson is going to take deep shots. Well, he took 8 deep shots last game. It was unreal. 20 yards down the field. I have to pull up the stat, and I will pull it up here very shortly. But I think they had the most deep balls down the field, and that's going to free up guys in the box too, especially Jonathan Taylor. I think he's primed for a big year personally, and I do think this could be a good week to start it out. So I don't know. I'm bullish on him. I do like what you said though, Snyder, about Josh Jacobs maybe getting some dump offs and stuff. I like that 2.5 prop at receptions for plus money.
Yeah.
Ford has mentioned that he wants to be, use him in the passing game and stuff. Last week he was sort of utilized, but I don't mind that here, especially when you're trying to make it easier on a young quarterback like Willis. All right, Chalk Fest. Get your forks ready because we have the most owned player on the entire slate, Jordan Mason, 5,200. Christian McCaffrey going on IR. It gives us the gift of a workhorse running back playing for the San Francisco 49ers, fresh off a 149-yard performance. How do we pass up on him, Drew? Are we moving on for Jordan Mason? No, you jam him in, right? This is good chalk, right? You eat the chalk.
Yeah, 27-point total, 5,200. You're going to get Christian McCaffrey workload. Unless they just completely, bite him in the ass because he told him that he was actually a starter last Friday and not on Monday. Or Sunday. What was that? Is that a Sunday night game? I don't remember when that one.
It was Monday, yeah.
Monday, yeah. So yeah, you told everybody he was a starter on Friday. Perfect. But yeah, I think it's obviously a jam spot. I do feel bad for the people that paid $10K to play best ball and got first pick, and now your dude is out for the season pretty much. I don't know what his timeline looked like, but that's not good.
I think he'll be back by end of October at the worst, hopefully.
Well, you're dead.
You're dead. Wasn't shot.
Hey, all that matters is weeks 15, 16, and 17 for basketball. Just get them healthy.
But first pick sucked. I don't know. I mean, you guys obviously did some, but get McCaffrey and come back. And I mean,
yeah,
dude, you're struggling. You're struggling.
Yeah, there was some chances too. You just end up with some complete duds.
Dude, I felt terrible. I was like, what am I doing? I'm looking at the guy that had fifth pick, and dude, he's got 4 studs, 3 studs are coming back to me almost. So, but yeah, I think Jordan Mason obviously is a fantastic spot. 34% owned. I forget who we talked about last week, and he died. Iavasi, whatever his name was. That did not work out, but I still think that was the right choice. And I think this is the right choice for Jordan Mason. If he's going to be 35% owned with the workload that we saw and we would expect, you're going to want to try to be almost double the field, in my opinion, for Jordan Mason. It opens up a lot in your lineups. It opens up a lot in the expensive games for stacking. So, yeah, Jordan Mason makes a ton of sense. Ironically enough, in this game, for being as chalky as it is, for the expensive workload pieces, especially from San Francisco, I'm getting Jordan Mason, Deebo Samuel stacks, which doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. So I might have to look into that more. Literally Mason and Samuel and not with Purdy. But I do think Mason – as a whole you don't have to overthink that. Just get them in your lineups. The other side, Minnesota, I'm not a Darnold fan. I think he sucks. He looks terrible. He looks stupid. I don't care. He just looks dumb. But yeah, I think Justin Jefferson's too expensive for having Darnold behind center. So I have a few shares of the run backs, but I'm not going to be super high on Minnesota. I think Jordan Mason is the play from San Francisco. I'm going to play some with Deebo Samuel, and that is pretty much it. I got some smaller one-off pieces, but honestly, I was surprised. I don't have very much Brock Purdy for a 27-point total. It's just the Jordan Mason show and Deebo Samuel show.
Yeah, that's interesting when you look at it that way too, where Deebo got the goal line carry the first one of the game. It was a little end around that he ended up scoring on. And I will say this too, Jordan Addison being out, I don't think it helps Justin Jefferson, but I do think it helps a guy like Jalen Nailor. Jalen Nailor should be in line to play almost the whole game alongside Jefferson. I'm a bigger believer in Darnold just because of the fact that Kevin O'Connell can easily, make things happen. He made him look like Peyton Manning last week. I don't know if I would stack him up, but I do think a one-off with Jefferson, just because getting up at wide receiver is really easy in a trail script, and running on the 49ers is incredibly hard. I mean, the Jets really couldn't do it against them on Monday night. Snyder, give your take on Jordan Mason alongside Deebo Samuel. Are you able to stack him up in a 205,000 person contest, or are you looking at maybe splitting them up too? And then your thoughts on the Vikings as well.
Yeah, I think the way I'm going to try and get a little different in tournaments, like on Sabre, I'm going to set a rule max 1 of Mason and Samuel. I think we'll see Jordan Mason 40 to 50% owned, depending on what type of contest you play, potentially even higher in some of those smaller entries, single entries, probably maybe closer to 55, 65 potentially. He's a cash lock, I think. But in tournaments, I'm going to try and separate him a little bit to get a little different. The spread in this game is kind of wild. It was 6 like a couple days ago. It's down to 4.5 now. But Kyle Shanahan's generally been good in these spots. He's 8-2 on the road as a favorite on a short week, so he usually does well in these situations. So I do expect San Francisco to show out here. I think Brandon Ayuk is a fine tournament play. I think he'll be under 10% owned. Didn't really do much last week. I know he had the short training camp and such, but I think this is a spot maybe that he kind of shines too. They put more on his plate this week, so I kind of like some Ayuk. I like Deebo, Jordan Mason, like everybody, but I'm going to play some Ayuk in this matchup. I don't mind running it back with I think my favorite option running it back is I'm not going to play Jefferson either. I'd rather play a lot more Lamb and ASB. But I'm going to go to some Jalen Naylor in this spot. I think he had the 1 catch last week for a touchdown. I think he's got some upside for under 4K. So I'm going to play some Naylor in some run backs there for my Minnesota guy. But this is an interesting game. It'll be interesting to keep watching this to see what the spread does in this. George Kittle's 5-5 if you want to go there. I don't know if I will. I'm probably going to stay off of the defenses in this matchup as well. So, the San Francisco guys is normal, but I'm going to try and get a little different by setting that rule max 1 of those guys in tournaments. So, and I'm in the cash games, jam them both, single entry, yeah. But I'm going to try and get overweight on Brandon Ayuk as well, as he's going to be under 10%, I think.
Yeah, that's a very interesting leverage play, right? With Brandon Ayuk, last week was probably one of the worst matchups you could possibly have, alongside a short training camp for him where you're just going against Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed. I hope no one overreacts to Brandon Ayuk. He's still a very good wide receiver. And yeah, 6,500 at no ownership when Deebo Samuel's projecting around 17-18%. I do like that leverage play there. One last note. Aaron Jones, 6,100. It's a tough matchup for running backs, but it's going to be like a mid-tier piece I think people can fiddle with. Jalen Naylor's price, 3,900. Like I mentioned a little earlier, I can get on board with that. But I think you guys covered that well. The good news is those first 6 games were actually all really good for fantasy. So if you're wondering, damn, Rubio, get us out of here. We got these next 6, trust me. I'll just go ahead and explain it. The Chargers and Panthers. So, Snyder, start me off here. I got the Panthers as the highest owned, individual or person or player in this game. I guess the Panthers defense, the highest owned piece. There it is. That's the word. And then you also have J.K. Dobbins at around 8%, Ladd McConkey at around 8% as well. The big news in this one, Joshua Palmer was not at practice on Friday, or did not practice on Friday. Sounds like he could be out. Does that move the needle on a guy like McConkey for you?
Yeah, I think McConkey is definitely a guy in play this week. He's under 5K. I was kind of high on him coming into the draft process. He was going so late early on. Even in I think I got him my last pick in my little home league or whatever, we did. No one knew who he was and such. I think he's fine option here. Don't really like this game as a whole. I think it's going to be a really slow type of game. I don't know if I can buy back in on J.K. Dobbins again this week. I think we'll see around 15% potentially, but man, he got a lot out of what he did there. He only carried the ball for 10 times. He averaged 13 and a half yards a carry. We've seen what Greg Roman did with him in Baltimore too. I expect the same. I expect 10 to 15 touches for him. If he can be super effective on those 10 to 15 touches, he'll smash again. But I could easily see him putting up an 8 spot this week as well too. have like 80 yards or something like that, or 50 yards rushing, 2 catches for 20 yards, put up something like that. So I think I'm going to be under on Dobbins this week. And this is kind of a cross-off game for me.
Yeah, I'm selling the Dobbins stock too. As much as I drafted him in best ball, zoom out, 10 touches. Like, come on, like that was 10 touches while you're playing incredibly well. Careful now, right? And I hope Dobbins does that every single week, selfishly. But realistically, if he's getting, even 15 touches a game, even nearing double-digit ownership is just a lot for me. Drew, I actually think Chuba Hubbard's probably the best play at running back in this game. I was very disappointed with Jatavion Sanders and the rest of this Panthers team last week. I had a lot of Sanders, and obviously him dudding. I think he had 1 catch early on and another negated by penalty. There's a value tight end around 3%, but are you kind of with Snyder here? It's a cross-off game for the most part. Or do you have any interest in someone that wasn't mentioned?
No, I mean, there's some one-offs. Like if Palmer's out, McConkey obviously is the guy that has probably the best ceiling. But otherwise, I don't have any QB exposure. I'm not going to stack this game up. It's pretty much a cross-off. Yeah, I don't even know if I'm going to play the defenses. Like if there's not going to be like a ton of passing, like feel like it's sloppy. I don't think I can play the defenses on this side either.
It's got to be the Chargers defense at the very least. If Joey Bosa is in,
I mean, if he's they're 0.8% owned. I mean, sure, but
look at what the Panthers did last week. He looked horrible, and I wanted to.
Oh, they're terrible. Yeah, I get that.
Oh man,
yeah,
and he's man. I don't want to blame him, but there were some times where there's a clear play. They almost showed a picture of it. You can't tell everything about a picture, but how do you not make those adjustments at this level and stuff? And if Joey Bosa misses, though, that's going to be a big hit to this Chargers defense. But if he's in, I think I would entertain the Chargers defense, especially if they're projecting for under 1%, because the Panthers, judging by week 1, were the worst team. I mean, that's not even close. But yeah, I mean, that's marginal though. Defenses are always like a dart throw anyway.
Now I will say this: I was watching the Millie on FanDuel, and Sully Bro Chill needed Joshua Palmer to score like 2 points, and he would have shipped the Millie. I think Tampa Bay stack went off so much that he ended up losing by like 10 or 12 points. But he literally he was like 4 points back, and he had all of Palmer, and he had someone else, and Palmer scored 2.4 points. I think, dude, I was sick. Like it wasn't even me, but like the dude should have scored 20 points. Like he was a lie. He should have won it by like 20 points. Dude. So
Sully Bro Chill, man. You talking about something? He's always active in the Discord. Yeah, he's really, really good DFS player.
He's at the Sphere tonight.
Yeah, he was JVC in them, right? They're watching the fight.
Dude, he's been everywhere. He was at the Tampa Bay game. He went to the Sphere. Well, he's living it up.
He's due for a milli after that bad beat then. And we're going to go into another game where, you know what, this one's not as bad. It's a total in the 40s. It's the Browns at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Deshaun Watson looked horrible last week. Then a whole nother thing to start the week. It's just not a great time to be a Browns fan at all. The news here to watch, David Njoku out, right? So Jordan Akins probably steps in as the lead tight end. He is 3K. He could be a very popular punt tight end. I actually think I would, my first thought when I saw Njoku was out is it's Harrison Bryant time, and then I found out he's no longer on the roster. So it's Jordan Akins time. Yeah, I actually think I can see myself playing a lot of Jordan Akins. On the Jaguars side of the ball, their most highest owned piece is the defense at 10% ownership. Jerome Ford at 8% and Evan Ingram at 6% here. Drew, I'm going to start with you here. Not a whole lot to love. The Jaguars offense last week outside of ETN and I guess Bigsby was pretty bad, especially through the air. Brian Thomas did okay, but really none of these receiving options got there. It's a tougher matchup this week, you'd think, as well. I mean, are you on or off?
Generally speaking, off. Definitely on last week, and this just seems like a spot where there's just not a big opportunity for ceiling. There is some risk of some storms later in the afternoon, so we'll see if that plays any type of impact on that game. But yeah, generally speaking, this isn't much. I will say, like, the Akins makes a lot of sense. Obviously, a 3K opens up some things. The Jerome Ford, it doesn't make sense to me. Like, I think he's going to be approaching 10% owned. That one doesn't. In this type of game environment against Jacksonville, I don't see them being in a position to use him early and feel like really comfortable. and I don't see them getting ahead later and using him late. So Akins is really like the main piece from Cleveland that I would probably play. Cooper's too expensive, and no thanks on Deshaun Watson. Then Jacksonville, there's just small pieces, but they're all pretty expensive, I think, relative to the ceiling.
Yeah, I'm with you on Jerome Ford. I mean, this is not a backfield. He got there late last week, too. It made me so upset when he got that garbage time touchdown there late on, too. And it cost me a little bit of money. I just don't see a whole lot of reason to be in on this game. Yeah. Snyder, do you have any sneaky plays from this one, or is it also just kind of a gross game?
Yeah, this is kind of a grosser game. I do think Jacksonville wins this game, potentially convincing. I think Deshaun Watson's broke. I think his shoulder's gone. I think that the Browns are in for a long season, a long career, a long contract with him too.
He just needs a massage.
Yeah, I think so. I could go back to Brian Thomas. He was one of those other rookies I was pretty high on coming in. He's under 5K as well. He's fine if you want to throw in there, I think. Akins is fine too. I mean, that's the one guy he could probably target. He played with him back in Houston, so they got a little bit of chemistry there. Had 3 catches last week. I think he's fine for 3K, but not much in this game. I may even look to the Jacksonville defense in this spot.
Yeah, Jaguars defense does seem like one of the more comfortable plays, 3,100 here. Seems like all the good defenses are hovering around this 3K range. I know when I built a dummy lineup earlier in the week, it was like the Cardinals defense I just threw in there because they were the cheapest bunch. But I think being around this 3K range for a defense does seem like the sweet spot if you want a good matchup. It's a dartboard. I mean, you obviously can never completely predict defenses or whatever. But, yeah, I think Jordan Akins would basically be my main guy to have in this one and hope for a large workload. But also someone in the chat mentioned Parkinson, who we're going to get to in a couple games too as well, who can soak up a little bit of ownership as well. So the New York Jets taking on the Tennessee Titans. The Titans blew a big lead last week against the Bears. And this is a matchup where outside of the running backs here with like Pollard and Tyjae Spears, which it's going to be a split backfield. Pollard did seem really good last week too, which is good to have. But it's a matchup that you don't really want to have a ton of Titans. Snyder, when I look at the Jets though, look at the ownership on Breece Hall. 30% owned is what is projected. He is incredibly involved in the passing game. I think in the first half, Aaron Rodgers only completed a pass to Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. So he's like basically wide receiver number 2. I mean, you have Alan Lazard there and stuff, but like Rodgers and them like ran so many sets for Breece Hall, screens, short passes, just stuff around the line of scrimmage. And then what he can do on the ground as well. Are you buying with what the Titans did last week against the Bears where they made Caleb Williams look horrible? Or are you thinking that, their defense isn't that great and we can target a guy like Breece Hall going forward?
Yeah, that was one of the roughest beats I think I've taken. I had Tennessee plus 4.5 in that game, and they lost without giving up, without Chicago scoring an offensive touchdown in that game, up 17 and ended up losing or whatever. Yeah, that was rough. I think that was like the first time it's happened or second time in like 30 years or something I heard on VSiN. But yeah, I think there's a couple of really good but chalky pieces in this game. I think Breece Hall is a great play. He's going to see a ton of volume in this matchup. I think the Jets kind of get right in this spot. Rodgers looked fine last week. Definitely looked a lot better than Cousins did coming off the Achilles. So I don't think there's anything to worry about from Rodgers' standpoint there. I think we see Bright Hall, get 5 to 7 catches in this game again, like he saw a lot last year. He saw the 5 catches last week. So I think he's there from a volume standpoint. He's a strong play. And then I was on Lazard last week. I know Big T was on him too. I wrote him up in my Showdown article, but I'll go back to Lazard at 3-3. I think that's good chalk. I think Rodgers has that chemistry with him from being back in Green Bay and such. So I'll play some Lazard chalk there. I know
he's not even chalk.
I think he'll get close to 20%, don't you?
I don't think so.
I think he's going to be. Sabre has him right now at 2% on Lazard.
Wow.
I think it's going to be that low too. I mean,
there's some other spots out there that are having close to 20, but
I think there's just enough cheap spots that people don't need a cheap one-off.
I think it'll definitely be in between. I don't think it'll be as low as 2. I don't think it gets 20, but I can see it being around.
Great, yeah.
I can say 8. That'd be my guess.
All right, that'd be awesome. Yeah, I definitely would. I'll be right around that 20% mark, I think, on Lazard. So I think he's a great option. Garrett Wilson, if you want. I don't know if I can fit him in because I'm just really going to try and jam CD and ASB a lot. But I could definitely see Wilson getting there, but not sure I'll get to him. And then it's going to be a pass for me on the Tennessee side.
Yeah, I'm with you. Tennessee, outside of Pollard, maybe would be like the only guy I would want. I don't want any of those wide receivers going against that Jets secondary, and I really don't want to go really anyone else too. Like on the Jets side, like I think like zooming out on Lazard too is always important. Like he didn't have a target until midway through or he didn't have a catch midway through the third quarter. And that's like zooming out, but at the same time, like God, Rodgers does love him, and he did find him in some tight spots too. He does. I think you can trust three guys on this team: Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, and then Lazard being that third guy there. Where when they were trailing, Rodgers looked for him there and got him back in the game even a little bit. Seahawks and Patriots. The news here is Kenneth Walker, doubtful for this one, likely going to miss. Zach Charbonnet should be the lead back. The problem with him, he's not very good at football. It's better than me. I mean, that helps. But I really love Charbonnet. As someone who drafted a ton of Kenneth Walker, I'm going to kind of be spite watching him this week and selfishly hoping for failure. Ramondre Stevenson, the Bengals made him look like modern-day Adrian Peterson last week. That was a very tilting watch. But the two running backs here, the only two pieces projected for double-digit ownership, Charbonnet around 21%, Stevenson around 12%. Outside of that, I mean, the Patriots defense, kind of. Jackson Smith and Jigba under 5K. Snyder, when you look at this game here, how interested are you in Charbonnet and Stevenson, and are you going to have a defense from this game?
I think I like the Patriots defense is my best play in this game. I don't think I'm going to buy in to the Charbonnet stuff. If he's going to get any ownership, I'm not going to get there. I think this is one of those slow, mucky type games too. I think the Patriots have a great defense still, like we saw last week. I think they're going to bring Seattle down to their level. Seattle's traveling west to east for an early game. I just don't like Seattle in this spot. I like the New England defense, though, quite a bit, under 3K. I think they can get some sacks, some turnovers here. I think they could put up 8, 9, 10 points, which is pretty solid for a defense. So that is my play for this game. I don't really want much of this 38-point total game, but I'll take the New England defense.
Yeah, Patriots defense did make Joe Burrow look very horrible last week. Drew, I like the point that Snyder made. Seattle going from west to east, losing that little bit of sleep, losing that little bit of routine, and then moving up, basically playing at a 10 a.m. Kickoff time, their local time and stuff. That always matters for a 1 p.m. game, I think. Is that something that you're looking at all?
Not really, just because they're so low owned. I actually want to have a piece of Seattle, but I get the point. There was another game earlier that was doing the same thing.
San Francisco, in a sense, just barely.
No, it was another game actually, but same point. Maybe it was the Chargers. But I do like this. I do like the Seattle side here. So the idea that I have here, so I'll just be a little bit different. I get the Patriots side as far as defense goes, but what I will say is from like the Seattle side, I think Geno Smith has several weapons that in a really good game script. He has Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's got DK Metcalf. I'm kind of crossing off Tyler Lockett right now until we see a little bit more, but DK Metcalf is cheap for the workload he could get, and Jackson Smith and Jigba is still cheap enough for the workload he does get as a number 2 possibly. So I do like Geno Smith here with DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Jigba, and I'm going to fade Zach Charbonnet. But I mean, I get it. There's concerns, but I think that's reflected a little bit in the ownership where you can get, honestly, in the right game environment, Seattle can put up a lot of points through DK Metcalf, and he's under 6K, which could be absurd. So I think it's a really cheap stack if you take Geno Smith with Metcalf and Jackson Smith.
Yeah, it's a good leverage stack there, especially if the Patriots defense does kind of end up getting near 10% ownership. I can kind of envision that there. So don't mind it at all. Let's go to the Rams and Arizona Cardinals, a very close game. I mean, this is close to a pick-em. Cooper Kupp, one of the highest owned wide receivers on the slate, about 29% ownership on the Millie for single entry and stuff. That'll be much higher. Kyron Williams also projecting for 20%. Colby Parkinson around 12 to 13. He'll be a pretty chalky option after what he did last week, especially after having a great first half. Tyler Johnson, so this is one at 3,300, which I don't love. I do think that Tutu Atwell or Jordan Whittington can all get involved. I don't want to play a chalk Tyler Johnson today. Stafford also projected for some ownership around 11%. And then we finally get Demarcus Robinson at 10. And then we finally get to the Cardinals. James Conner is actually projected for 8% ownership. And that's the highest one on the Cardinals here. Drew, the Rams are incredibly popular today. I mean, this is 5-6 guys projected for double-digit ownership. Is this a spot that you really want to hit? I mean, I think it is.
Okay. You convinced me. No,
it is.
No, it is. It's surprising. It's surprising that Arizona's ownership is as low as it is, considering they both have the same totals, and a lot of the points are through Kyler Murray. But I will say, like, from the Rams side, obviously with Puka out, Kupp is going to continue to get majority of the workload, and he's still cheap. He's $1,200 cheaper than CeeDee Lamb. So I mean, there's a reason why he's going to be so popular. And there's a reason why he probably should be more popular. But yeah, I think both sides of this game probably should be a little bit more owned than what they are. Cooper Kupp as a one-off is probably the way that I'll go. Stafford doesn't put up big scores, even as much as Cooper Kupp gets there. You don't see Stafford really doing much with his feet, and I just don't think he's going to get there without Puka in this game. Now, the Arizona side I'm really struggling. Either like the spread is off and Arizona should be a bigger dog or should be a dog. Otherwise, this is going to be the Kyler Murray show with Trey McBride, in my opinion. So I'm not sure how James Conner, if he's going to do a ton of the work, but this is a weird spot where every single one of them is under 9%. And you have the other side of the game. Everybody's over 12%, it seems like. So yeah, this seems like the Arizona would be the contrarian millie maker side, and take one run back with Kupp on the other side with Arizona as the main stack.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Snyder. When I look at it here, Kyler Murray's projected for 6% ownership. I am with Drew. I don't want to ever really pair up Stafford in a millie maker lineup. I know you can double stack him with ease and stuff, but his upside compared to some of these other guys in his price range just lacks compared to even a guy like Jake Daniels and stuff. Like, I'd rather play Daniels naked along with Kupp than Stafford with Kupp in this sense.
Yeah, I think this is a spot where you're going to see a lot of cash teams play like three guys from this game. I think Kyren Williams is probably my favorite play of these guys. I think he's in a great spot here. I do like the Cardinals, though, from a betting standpoint. I know Big T and ODB were on the Arizona side as well on the Print Factory show. So I need to find some guys off of Arizona to kind of bring it back. I think Cooper Kupp is way underpriced, so he's going to see 10 to 15 targets. So he's had 21 targets last week. I don't think he's going to see that much, but I think he's going to see 15 targets, though, in this game. I think he's a great option. I don't mind Tyler Johnson. I like the upside that he has. He's got some pop to his step. I don't mind him. I know he's going to be a little popular. I think he's got more upside, though. I know Demarcus Robinson's got the role there. He's more well-established in that offense. He had 7 targets last week, 2 for 4 catches. And everybody's going to – a lot of people are going to play Parkinson as well at 31, which is a great play just for the tight end position was so dusty last week. Yeah, I'll probably have him in the pool too. I mean, I'm going to have a lot of these guys in the pool. I just don't know how I'm going to differentiate from out of it. This is just – I think this game is going to kind of go nuts. I think this is another shootout type game. Wouldn't surprise me to see Marvin Harrison kind of get some more targets here. The problem was, I think last week was the Bills were trying to keep Kyler Murray contained inside the offensive line, not allowing him to scramble, and he's just a little fella. He can't really see over the offensive line that well, so that could be a problem. And like I said earlier, with the spend-up tight ends.
He's just a little fella.
Yeah.
He is a little fella.
Like the spend-up tight ends, I think Trey McBride is great for tournaments. If everyone's going to play Parkinson, you can go to Trey McBride. He's probably going to see 8 to 10 targets. He saw 9 last week. He's a great spend-up option, I think, as a lot of people are going to go those cheapies like Parkinson. I think McBride's probably around 10% or less. So I think he's a good spot. That's the main spot I think I want to bring him back with from the Arizona side. Maybe Harrison, but mainly Trey McBride, I think.
Yeah, Trey McBride. I do like what you guys are saying there. My take on the thing here, Snyder, is just like if Tyler Johnson's going to be around 10% ownership, 11% is what they're projecting. Like, I'd rather just 700 more for Demarcus Robinson all day. And that's not the same. I think Tyler Johnson, he did a great job making this roster. He did a great job on Sunday night, making an impact and stuff. But I'm like, man, the uncertainty where Demarcus Robinson going to be lower owned than him, that's like astounding to me. Like, we saw Demarcus Robinson had success Sunday night. Anyway, it wasn't like, he performed very similarly to Tyler Johnson, but he was very good last year.
Flipped over. I think they're pretty close. I think they're going to be pretty close. The same.
It's like a 2%, but like at the same time, like, I would want way more Demarcus Robinson than I would like Tyler Johnson. Colby Parkinson, that's an interesting punt. Like, he did good last week. I think he's just safe. I think he's going to be a very popular cash option. Mm-hmm. I'm fine with it in a million. I mean, I just said I was punting with Jordan Akins and stuff. Like, if I had a lineup where it had Parkinson and Demarcus Robinson, for example, with no Stafford, I'm fine with it. I mean, I'm honestly fine with it. I think it would take a lot to go right and stuff, but you're 7K and hoping for 15 targets combined, which is honestly a possibility with the way they threw the rock last week. So I'm going to throw a slight curveball here, Drew. We're going to start with you here on this Bengals Chiefs one, because I can't wait to lead in with Bo Nix to Snyder here off of the last game. So for the Bengals and Chiefs, this is a game where, Rashee Rice and Yosebas are projected for almost 20% ownership apiece around there. Isaiah Pacheco, 15, Jamar Chase, 13, and Patrick Mahomes, 10. My issue with this is I actually think the Kansas City Chiefs defense is just good. I think the Bengals last week, outside of Yosebas, I don't really want any of these pieces. I feel like this was the case last year where people just love to game stack the Chiefs and they don't really give you a ton of reason to game stack them. I mean, let's be honest here. Their defense has been solid, and it was solid against the Ravens too, outside of guard and Isaiah Likely. I mean, I don't really want to go overboard on this game. I don't want a ton of Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow stacks. I honestly think I could X out the Bengals for the most part and have way more interest in, the Cardinals or Rams, for example. What about you?
Especially with the ownership, like it seems like a little bit of residual fantasy points from 2023, but yeah, it doesn't really make a ton of sense. I mean, the spread's still pretty substantial. It's like 6.5. I don't quite understand how. I mean, I get going back to like an Isavas, but like 17% in this type of game, it doesn't really add up to me. Jamar Chase coming back at 7,800, maybe take a flyer there as the run back off of Kansas City. So like that piece I get, but like overall, like this game is higher owned than some of the other, like Arizona we just talked about, and their point total is 3 less. So yeah, I'm with you there. Doesn't make sense. I will say, I mean, I think I'll probably play some Isavas at 3,800 still in my player pool, and Jamar Chase will probably be a one-off, just to try to get some upside at the price. Again, he's 1,000 less than CeeDee Lamb. He probably has similar ceiling under the right circumstances. But like the cheap pieces here, I don't think I really want to go take a shot on them. Seems like the way they would have to go through is the reliable pieces like Chase. As far as Kansas City goes, there's plenty of pieces. I mean, Pacheco's still too cheap, I think. Rashee Rice is getting up there, but he's the main guy they're going to go to. So, yeah, this is a pretty good stack from the Kansas City side. There's no harm, no foul. I mean, he's expensive. I mean, honestly, Mahomes is probably still cheap compared to last year. His other pieces are just a little bit more expensive, but I think that's probably where you want to go.
I want to go ahead and get ahead of the pronunciation police and say that I do not condone half the names that Drew pronounces.
Which one did I do?
There it is. I knew it. I knew we'd get one. I knew we'd get one.
Pacheco. Is it Pacheco?
Pacheco?
Is it Pacheco? I said Pacheco.
I thought it was Pacheco. Maybe it's that Floridian accent. I don't know.
I just go off of whatever Big T says. I'm going to throw him under the bus. Pacheco.
I think it might just be an accent.
Is it Pacheco? I mean, I could get it.
Chico.
I mean, honestly, his name doesn't even – you can't even pronounce Isaiah without another A. So, like, it doesn't make sense either way.
I just wanted to get ahead of the pronunciation, please. We're all good.
That's fine. I don't care. That's why I cover golf. It's much easier. It's just Sam and Steve and Fred. I mean, it's very simple names.
Very simple. Snyder, Rashee Rice, you mentioned being chalk earlier, 6,700. He looked really good last week against your Ravens.
Yeah.
Yosebas, in my dummy lineup I was building, I was like, oh, man, I'm going to go right back to Yosebas. Is this a game, though, where, I mean, similar to how Drew and I are feeling, where it's just like, do I really want to be overweight on the Bengals? I just, even as a Bengals fan, I'm awful. Outside of Yosebas, they're gone.
Yeah, I was looking. I thought I was going to be more on the Bengals coming in. We saw the spread open at 6. It dropped down to 5. And then the limits start to open up on Friday and Saturday. Some of the higher limits start to open up. And you saw a lot of money started coming in on the Chiefs. It's back up to 6.5 now. If it hits 7, that's a huge move. I don't think it'll really hit 7 because I know there'll be some buyback there. But, yeah, I have more interest in the Chiefs now than I thought I was going to. The way the spread was moving, I thought we might be looking at like a 4-point spread here by Saturday, Sunday. But there's people coming in on the Chiefs now, so it gives my interest in them. I think Rashee Rice is a great option there. He's going to be a guy a lot of people consider for cash, single entry type stuff. He's right up there in the top 3 or 4 wide receivers and such. I like Worthy for tournaments. He's got that huge game-breaking upside. He's faster than Tyreek Hill, they say. He showed that on that one play last week. Got loose for that 35-yard touchdown. So I like Worthy in tournaments. Kind of as a pivot to Rice. He's going to be like a fourth the ownership of Rice probably. So I think he's fine. $600 less. Yoshi's fine if you want to run it back with him. I played Yoshi in cash last week. I didn't play him in tournaments. Worked out from the tournament standpoint. I think Pacheco is definitely interesting, though, in this spot. 6,900. He's going to be under-owned since he's kind of priced up a little bit. I think this is one of those spots that we saw like last year toward the end of the season. They really started to ride him more. The majority of the games last year, he saw 16 to 20 carries. He saw 15 last week. Saw some work out in the backfield, a couple catches. I think this is a Pacheco game. I think the Chiefs are actually going to roll in this spot now, which I was kind of on the other side leading up to this game. But the way everything's trending, I think Kansas City is in a good spot here to get the win here at home. So I like Pacheco. I think he's my favorite option on the Chiefs side from an ownership-wise, but I think Rice is a great option. I think a lot of people are going to go to Mahomes in cash now with the values we got, so I think he'll be popular in tournaments as well. But if you want to double it, go Mahomes, Rice, Worthy. I think that'll be unique for like the Millie Maker.
Yeah, I mean, what we saw from Xavier Worthy, I mean, what we saw from him at Texas, too. I mean, it was great to see that the Chiefs utilized that speed right away and stuff. I know the second touchdown was a bit more fluky. It was just a completely blown coverage, but that's the stuff he's capable of. I think I would definitely be more entertained with the Chiefs. Pacheco, I mean, what he did, last season and what he even did in week 1, where I think he was in the optimal on that Millie or, in the winning lineup on Thursday Night Football. He's going to be good. I mean, the only thing that, play devil's advocate on is Samaje Perine having a larger role this week in the passing game and stuff, where it could take away some catches from him. But this is a Bengals defense that made Ramondre Stevenson, crack 100 yards without really much effort. So I would definitely prefer the Chiefs side, and Pacheco definitely on the top of that list. All right, Snyder, I've been waiting all year for this one. I couldn't believe it when you said you were very high on Bo Nix coming into the year. And I know you have a Rookie of the Year future on him, so I don't want to clown him too bad. But, I was shocked that someone as sharp as you loved Bo Nix coming in after this rinky-dink college-style offense in Oregon where they just kept doing jet sweeps, calling him an accurate passer. I was super tilted by it. And the fact that you weren't here last week made me upset because I was like, I was really wanting to go in on Bo Nix. But go ahead and tell us about this game. I mean, Justin Fields seems like, a decent option. Najee Harris, another decent option, 5,400 and 5,500 respectively. Outside of those two, I mean, maybe you can talk me in on the Broncos defense, 2,800, but it's almost a dead game, right? And then go into your Bo Nix spiel.
I think this is kind of a cross-off game. I do like Denver from a betting side, though. I think they're the spot to be in this game. I think they're going to scheme up some ways to get Bo away from TJ Watt. Sean Payton's really good at doing that. So I think this is going to be like a slower, muddied up kind of game as well. I think the Broncos are going to win this game. Spots I like from the Broncos side, though, not many. I think Bo Nix. I do like Bo Nix's future. I think he's kind of like Taysom Hill, but he can actually throw. He's just kind of like that same skill set. He did have good stats, threw the ball well at Oregon. I think he was like 38 touchdowns and like 4 interceptions or something like that. But I don't really have much interest in this game. I do like the Denver defense, though. So I'll be high on the Denver defense at 2,800. They're below 3K, so I like that. So Denver defense is my favorite option in this game.
Perfect. Drew, get me. You can go ahead and just say pass if you want. I mean, we can move right on to the plays of the day. Or do you want to talk about this one?
No, I got a little bit of exposure to Denver, but not much. So
Perfect.
I'll play some Bo Nix. I'll root for Bo Nix for 5% of my lineups tomorrow.
Kevin talks about Tomlin in the chat. Tomlin is a great underdog coach. He's really good as an underdog. As a favorite of 3 points on the road, he's 38%.
That's an interesting one there. All right, so now we know what the rules. Snyder, you weren't here last week, but what did I say? I was under 10%. Or was it under 8% actually?
Yeah. 8% ownership, not projection.
Yeah. Don't pull a Kurt, who accidentally did projection only for this one. His play of the day did the best of all ours.
Who did he pick?
He picked Gabe Davis. AD Mitchell like DK Metcalf. Wasn't great. Snyder. So here's the rule: under 8% ownership, SaberSim flagship contest only, because that is the millie for the flagship ownership. It has to be your play of the day. So I'm stalling here. But here's the great thing, though, about this. Drew is usually always...
What's the...
What was that?
Oh, never mind. No, I thought you were going to me. No, keep going.
I feel like we're lagging here, something like that. Drew, go ahead and give me your under 8% owned play of the day for the millie.
Oh, it's going to be Mike Evans from Tampa Bay.
Mike Evans from Tampa Bay. So if you're unfamiliar with him, he's a future Hall of Famer. 7.13% ownership, a decent projection as well. I like the build because you know why? I said it before. You have plenty of room to spend up at wide receiver, so that fits it perfectly. Snyder, under 8% play of the day. Who is it?
I just swapped off of my NFL on Saber to a UFC to look at my percentages. What's Pacheco's ownership on Saber?
Oh, you went over. You got to go. What? He is 16.
16. There's no way he's 16%.
Hey, we don't make the rules.
We have to use Saber. We can't use our own justification.
Oh my god.
Yeah, we're gonna have like JBC come here, but my numbers show 7.5.
Yeah,
and that's what I'm going off of.
All right, I'm gonna go unique then. Give me Josh Jacobs. He's got to be under 8% in Saber.
Oh, yes, he is. 6%. I was scared for a second, but yes, Josh Jacobs and Mike Evans to kick us off here. And then let me go ahead and be a complete procrastinator here because I should have been doing this beforehand, but then I didn't do it. I'm going to go Jonathan Taylor. I really like this matchup. The Green Bay Packers defense made Saquon Barkley look like the Saquon Barkley of old. I just think that this Colts defense is going to run all over the Packers. I think Anthony Richardson has a big day on the ground too, but I'm going to be high on Taylor here. And I just think, along with Jordan Mason and them, you can get some awesome combos. I like what you guys said too with those guys in the mid-range and higher price tier with Josh Jacobs on the opposite side of the game and Mike Evans. I think it's going to be a good slate for us, good slate for RPS. Code RPS15, 15% off your first payment here at Run Pure Sports. Thanks for joining us. We have Drew here below, and then we also have Snyder to my right. Have a great rest of y'all's night, and bye-bye.